So welcome everyone to this webinar that is about setting up your Center of Excellence and how to implement the Power Platform Center of Excellence in your organization. So this is the second webinar in the series of 3 webinars. The first webinar was about the process and what you should do, sort of the prerequisites of actually creating a Center of Excellence within the organization, the things you should think about. Then there's this webinar where I go into a little bit more of a technical detail about actually installing the starter kit created by the Microsoft PowerCat team. And then in the third webinar, we're going to be looking at how to sort of make sure that you succeed with your Center of Excellence in the long term. So how to actually sort of nurture all of this that you've set up and anchoring this within the organization itself. So a little bit about myself, if I can get the slides here to work. There we go. So my name is Søren, and I've been working as a Power Platform solution architect for Projectum for about 4 years now. When I don't work with Power Apps or the Power Platform in Projectum, then I have a blog, the powerappsviking.com. I have a YouTube channel as well, the same name, and I'm also on X, Twitter, and I have a couple of different Power Platform certificates, the Microsoft certificates. Basically every single Power Platform certification except for the robotic process automation certification. So as I mentioned, so this is a part of 3 webinars. The first webinar was about sort of defining your Power Platform strategy, setting up the platform team, and defining your maker enablement journey. All of these processes, things that need to be thought about and in place before you actually start working with the Center of Excellence kit. In my opinion, at least. Then there's this webinar where we are now, where we're going to sort of complete the technical setup of this the Center of Excellence starter kit. And then in the third webinar, we're going to be looking at nurturing and anchoring this change within the organization, making sure that all the hard work you've been doing up until that point actually pays off, and that you get the full effect of your Center of Excellence. So the agenda today, we're just going to reiterate some of the points of what is the Center of Excellence, what can it do for you, what will it provide, the key resources to involve, some of the technical requirements and the specifications there, looking at the Center of Excellence starter kit tool and getting an overview of that, and then looking at sort of planning for the future. So the benefits, if you think about if you haven't installed the Center of Excellence yet, and you're sort of thinking, looking at that and saying, how do I get started? Microsoft has provided a lot of good resources about this. There's the Center of Excellence starter kit. There's the adoption workbook, adoption best practices, and adoption maturity model. I definitely recommend that you also fill those out, or at least look at those to get sort of an indication of where you are in your organization in terms of using the Center of Excellence or setting it up, or your Power Platform maturity. And I'm actually also quite curious. Maybe you can answer in the chat if any of you have already previously installed the Center of Excellence starter kit, the toolkit. It could be that you've installed some of the older versions, or it could be that you installed sort of a recent version. The PowerCat team is really busy and good at updating the starter kit. So if you've installed it within the past 3 months, for example, then there's a new version available now that you can look at that brings some updates and some extra functionality. So I definitely recommend also keeping it updated, always making sure you have the latest versions or versions installed, and of course it's always freely available from the Microsoft documentation page. So the last time, just to reiterate this, this was sort of the highlights, or the key areas we went through. So you need to make sure that you've defined what you actually want to achieve with your Center of Excellence, identify who will support this, assessing the level of freedom you want to provide for your citizen developers. So what I mean by that is that there's the There's the sort of a level of do we want to give the citizen developers full freedom to just freely create apps, to create new environments, create new types of apps, create new Power Automate flows, and connect them with as many sources as they want, and give them that sort of a lot of creativity and freedom, or is it necessary to have more control, to have more restrictions in place, and make sure that there are only certain type of people are able to create new environments, are able to create new apps, or are able to use specific connectors in your Power Automate flows, for example. So that can mean quite a big of a difference, and all of this is possible by using the Center of Excellence Starter Kit. But if you don't really have a clear idea of what you want to do with it, then simply opening up the Center of Excellence can be a little bit daunting, and it can seem like there's a lot. But so if you already thought about these things before, then it's a little bit more clear and easier to start actually using the Starter Kit. Then also identifying sort of the processes that need to be in place to find this fit. As what I mentioned before, with sort of the creativity on one side and the more control and the restrictions on the other side, is always this fit between making sure that maybe IT is happy, or if you're working with especially sensitive data, it could also be a very good point to make sure that you have certain restrictions in place for certain environments, certain types of tables, or certain connectors. What are your sort of goals? What is it that you want to achieve with your Power Platform? Is it that you only have a few makers that are always going to be just within a certain department, making specific apps for the rest of the company, or for a certain department that they're only going to be using these Power Apps or Power Automate flows, for example? Or is it that you actually want to roll out the Power Platform use for your entire organization and make it available, and have makers and citizen developers that can freely start creating new Power Apps or flows to sort of increase their productivity and help them in the day-to-day business? So also some slides that I also showed last time, but so the idea, sort of the ideal setup that everyone thinks about when they're thinking about the Power Platform and the Power Platform Center of Excellence, is that you have a governance plan of saying that we are able to keep things neatly controlled. You have your specific environments for specific departments, and then you have a default environment with a couple of things that are this low-code personal environment. But what really happens is that typically we see that your tenant gets flooded with a lot of different environments, different apps, different flows, different bots, etc. Everything that you can imagine if these things are opened. And that's not a bad thing per se. It could be that it's actually a good thing, that there's a lot of productivity that is being added because of this, and there's a lot of benefits to these different users being able to create these things and play around with these things. So having this reality isn't necessarily a problem. The sort of the main thing is that how you handle it and how you control this, and this is where the Center of Excellence Starter Kit also comes in and gives you this ability to get this overview and be able to sort of manage this in a better way. So again, the Center of Excellence will not do the following. It won't give you this overview of environments and applications, developers, etc. by itself. But it will help you with all these things by supporting you and your team. And my main point here is that if you don't have resources within the organization or your department dedicated to actually using the Center of Excellence on a sort of a scheduled basis, at least, then just installing the Center of Excellence Starter Kit by itself won't fix anything. You actually need to have dedicate some time to actually keep track of this and manage this. Again, here we have we typically see the second you install, or we see that for a lot of companies, the second that they install the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, that's sort of the peak of the inflated expectation, where sort of you're thinking, okay, well, I have a complete overview, I'm getting complete control of everything, but the problem is that actually starting to use it and actually implementing these processes and going through every single day or week or month or however often you feel necessary, that's sort of the hard part. And that's why I'm also doing this in 3 different webinars to sort of make sure that we emphasize that point, that it's important to actually dedicate some resources and some time to using this correctly to get the most benefit out of your Center of Excellence. Microsoft has defined some sort of different levels for where your organization can be in terms of the maturity. And I would say that if you are at the point where you're considering or you're starting with installing a Center of Excellence, you are here at the first level, the initial level. And then you can sort of move down into to the different levels afterwards of being able to actually fully commit and use the Power Platform and have that anchored within the organization and have full benefit of what the Power Platform actually can provide. So we're going to go through now the actual Center of Excellence Starter Kit and have a look at that. So there's the Starter Kit. There's a little bit about DLP policies, environment policies, maker policies, and then there's also some different personas that we should think about. There's the admin persona, there's the maker persona, and the user persona. So here we're going to mainly focus on that the users that are probably following this webinar, looking at this webinar, is the admin persona. But we also need to consider probably one of the most important things is the maker persona, who in the organization are the people that are actually creating new applications, creating new flows, etc. And then there's of course also the users, those that just need to have access to these business applications or flows or that are using this, and it sort of helps to split that into different buckets and be aware of that. And this is also supported within the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, that you can define these. You can have Azure resource groups set up for these specifically to handle those, because it could be that you also need to inform these users about different things on these different levels. So let's go into the demo itself. So we're going to be looking at sort of the installation and setup and how these different modules work. So I have a demo environment set up here where I've installed all the Center of Excellence toolkits or the packages. Actually, so let's just also look at this. So when you download the Center of Excellence Starter Kit, let's just look at our downloads folder. So then there's this. It's a zip file that you get from the Microsoft PowerCat team, or you get that from the documentation. Once you extract that zip file, you get this folder that contains all of these different objects here. So then there's for example, the core components. It's what we're mainly going to be looking at here today. Those are those contain most of what you're going to be interested in when you're getting started with your Center of Excellence. And then there's also a lot of different other types of things that you can graduate to and advance to afterwards when you've gotten the hang of the core components, I would say. Also, there's some Power BI dashboards. There's a dashboard we can see here. I have the latest version, so this is from May 2024. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of updates being made to all these components. So it's important that you also go in and download a new version and update it every once in a while. But let's get back to our environment. I also recently just imported this in some files just to make sure that it's completely updated. So it's a little bit daunting to take a look at this in the beginning. But what we should get started with is, let's see here if we can find the setup. So we start with the Center of Excellence setup and an upgrade wizard. Let's just take a look at some of the things we're going to be going through. So this is the initial setup. And also if we go to any of the other applications in the beginning, it's going to tell us that we need to complete the initial setup before we can get started. Also just to tie back to when I was talking about the different solutions that you import. There's a lot of different things that you need to configure as you're importing this solution. So these are, of course, managed solutions, and there's quite a lot of environment variables that you need to configure to make sure that it's actually working. So there's also an app registration that is necessary. So I also recommend that you read through the documentation on the Microsoft documentation page about the necessary components to set up the Center of Excellence. In terms of time, depending on your IT proficiency, I would say it's anything between a couple of hours and a day to do the first setup. So I would recommend setting aside some time to set this up the first time, making your app registration, going through all these things. There's quite a lot of information that is necessary before you get the full benefit of it. If you already defined the different user groups, so you have here, for example, some Azure group set up, some Office 365 account set up or group set up, then it's also you're also filling out that information. There's the admin that you also need to fill in. So there's the main email address of the Power platform, or the Center of Excellence admin that is going to receive the main information about if there's anything going wrong with the flows, for example. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration and filled out as you're installing these. You can always change these later. Of course, these are set as environment variables on the environment. And I also recommend using a specific separate environment for your Center of Excellence. So instead of installing that in your default environment or just a personal environment, then install it on a Center of Excellence environment itself. But yeah, so we have the initial setup page, and this takes a little while. So that's also why it was good to be able to talk a little bit. Let's just go back here a couple of steps, because of course I already ran through this. So yeah, so it takes us through. We're not going to go through every single step of this, but just to give you an idea, there's a lot of click-throughs of all of these setups here. So we need to make sure that it's going to check for some of your licenses in order. Do you have your the Power Platform admin set up and connected correctly? Everything. Then it's going to be looking at these communication methods. So these were the three groups I mentioned previously. We have the admins, the makers, and the users. So here we can configure these groups. So this is used for getting in touch with these three groups. Then there's some settings we need to set in here again and we fill out the admins as well. Then some of these steps take a little while. So let's see here. It should hopefully be quicker because we already filled it out. Or maybe let's see in the chat. Is there anyone that said that they actually have installed the Center of Excellence already? Okay, nobody is willing to admit that they already installed it. But we also see quite a lot that people have installed it maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, but they didn't really get the full potential. They didn't get the full benefit of it because usually the lack of the processes in place to actually support the Center of Excellence. So this dedication of these resources that you really need to make sure you're actually getting the full benefit. Then here, so using a data export as for the data source here is still in preview, so we're just going to go with cloud flows, and there's a lot of cloud flows that are added here as part of the core components and the starter kit. Then it makes sure that all the flows are running. So here you get an update that if there's some of the flows are for some reason turned off, they need to make sure that we fix, is there any environment variables not working, etc. Refreshing that, and then we go to the next step. And sometimes it takes a little while to load. So while that is loading, we can also find the next point here. So there's a couple of different setup wizards we can go through. We can open this other one in the meantime here. No, we don't need that. Oh yeah. So this is for collecting your audit log data. So the Center of Excellence does quite a lot of things for you. We're able to. So this is where we're using I mentioned this previously, the app registration that is being used here. So if we want to connect this Center of Excellence, so we can go here and look at audits and also so we connect this to Azure. Let's see here if the setup, this still takes a little while here. And once we get through this, we can also just open this. The main thing that in the beginning that you want to look at as your so now if we're saying from the admin persona, so we're talking about the three different personas, the admins, the maker, and the users. So if we're looking at it from the first persona, the admin persona, then the main application is a model-driven app. So there's a different mix of model-driven apps and Canvas apps, but the model-driven app called the Power Platform Admin View is sort of the main view that admins are going to be looking at. So this step ran through. I'm just going back here to the setup and making sure we're going through everything. There's the inventory flows. So these are checking so there's a lot of flows and there's a lot of tables in the background that are being created that are running to make sure that it's gathering how many different environments, makers, flows, apps, etc. are there, and compiling that into these different tables and making a database of all that. So we have that. So this can be used here for the dashboard in the model-driven app, and also used in the Power BI reports as well. So also depending on how you want to sort of look at this data and interact with it, you can either use the model-driven app or you can use the Power BI reports as well. So then there's also the possibility, so depending on how large the team is of your admins, you can also share some of these different applications and sort of share that responsibility or delegate that responsibility if there are certain people that should be in charge of these different areas. So let's also jump here. Then make sure you publish your Power BI dashboard. And also there's some great YouTube tutorials as well to look at this, and some tutorials in general. And that's it. And there is of course also a lot of different links to working with these different things. What is in the core components, and this new managed environments, which is sort of a recent feature within the last year or so from Microsoft that gives admins much more control over environments. So where previously all environments were unmanaged environments by default. So now we have the possibility to manage things a little more and use that also as part of the pipelines. So the deployment pipelines, which is now in native as well in the Power Platform, that you can use this, as well as of course use the ALM accelerator. It's also a pipeline possibility, which uses a Canvas app that is also created by the PowerCat team. So I can definitely recommend, if you're interested in this application lifecycle management and want to have a lot of control over the deployment process, then the ALM accelerator connects to your DevOps repository or environment, to DevOps, and there you can have a repository and where you have your solutions and can export that to the environments there from there and control that whole flow. So I definitely recommend checking that out. Now we're going to go through the admin view here, not in depth, but just some of the basics. We have our complete overview here, where we see a little bit of about makers, environments, apps, flows, etc. As we can see, this is just a demo environment. So I only have on this tenant, I only have one single environment and not a lot of makers. So it's going to look a little bit strange here, of course. This mainly consists of the apps that are actually used by the Center of Excellence starter kit and the flows from the same kit as well. And these are all installed by this mod administrator, which is me for today. But then we also get this ability to sort of drill into each of these different sections, drill into looking at these business applications apps, the Power Apps apps, looking at different flows, environments, connectors, bots. But where it really gets interesting is if we click, because everything is sort of also connected. So this is, as I mentioned, based on a lot of different tables that are added here. But clicking into this is where we get this further level of control and the ability to actually work more as admins or implement governance here. So, for example, now going into an example of just one app. And here we have a lot of different tabs. We can see here a lot of locked fields because we can't really control when it was created or modified or published. But we have some ability to go into to some governance. We will get into also how is this filled out? Where do we get this data? Is this something that is filled out manually by yourself, or something that needs to be filled out by the makers when they request the ability to create a new app? Or is this even important? Because there's also the question of what is your need for actually getting this type of data, and how much do you need about this? If you have several hundred different citizen developers, then perhaps it's a good idea to start implementing a level of governance where these things are filled out. But if it's a department of 5 people making apps, then this would not be necessary at all. Then it was just seem like overkill, perhaps. Then we also see which connections are these apps using, which sort of how many times are these apps used, which people are they shared with, the ability to provide feedback on apps, fill out ROI if you're making apps that are sort of on a business level, if there's a business case attached to it, perhaps, and set some specific settings for it. If we go back to the overview, there's also other things we can click on. We can click on the environment, or go into sort of who's the owner, and get more information about that. It would be the same as looking at the environment here. Going into that to also give you an idea of, so we get many of the same possibilities here, looking at the governance for environments. Should makers fill out a questionnaire or a process for creating a new environment? And I mentioned this a couple of times now, so let's also just look at that. So what I mean by that is here we have, no, so it was not this one. So let's just see it here. Yes, perhaps it's this one. We're going into the preview of it. Let's take a look at this here. Perhaps it's this one. So they made also made some changes since I looked at it last time, I think. Yeah. Let's see here. It always takes a little while to start up. Another thing you can have here, so now that we just opened this here, we have you can have some different templates. So let's say that you have some apps that are really, really good that you want to make a template or make a sort of an overview of best practice apps within your organization, then you can have this a catalog of these application templates. This would typically be for Canvas apps. If you, for example, also have a design that is being used within the organization, and also you have this ability to create this solution assessment. Now it's going to load a long time. I think also just to make sure that I'm not running out of time, let's also just make sure that we move along sort of quickly. So along with this, the templates, we also have the ability to have an app catalog, so an overview of all the apps. So this is made for makers. They can have this, or for users, they can have this overview of your apps. And then for the makers, they also have this. Was that the one I opened before? Yes. So this is what I wanted to look at. So for makers, if they want to request, for example, make a request for an environment, they're added to. They have the ability to do this here, and we have the same process for being able to request to make a new app. And here you have to fill out this business case, some of this governance information that I showed here before. How you want to handle that is of course completely up to you, depending on the needs of your organization. So there's a lot of things we could do look at here. Another last thing I want to just show is that if you want to be more in control, because now we talked a lot about the sort of giving a lot of freedom to makers about what they want to be able to do. But being able to control more, let's say we want to control your applications, then there's these two different Canvas apps where you have the permissions for apps and flows, and here you're able to go in and either by environment, check it by owner, or check if you have orphan flows. Then go in and set these different settings for these flows. You can add different owners, add descriptions, or change some of these permissions here, and the same is possible for your application. So there's a lot of things that can be done, but again, none of these things really make sense if you don't have a clear policy, a clear idea of what you actually want to achieve with it. If it's just a question of you're going in and saying, okay, how do I get started with it? Then it's going to be overwhelming, and there's too many possibilities and options to get started with it. So again, I would recommend that you have a clear policy in place, that you work with that already beforehand, before you start working with these. Then these tools gives you the ability to actually to implement that within the organization. Make sure that the right people have the right access and the right tools to do that, to keep this work. Then it's getting through the hard part of this curve that I showed before. And then after that, it's a question of actually implementing this afterwards in the organization, which is going to be what the next webinar is about. So let's just see here. Just going to go back to my slide here. Yeah, so we looked at what are some of the requirements for the installation, what is the part of the setup, and what are the administration modules. So then there's the third webinar where I'm hoping to see you all again. If you want to, you can of course watch the first webinar on Projectum's YouTube channel, where this of course also will be, and the third webinar will be as well. So you can also, if there's something that you missed, you want to rewatch, then you can find that there easily. And then if you have any questions, you're also always welcome to reach out to me. You can find me on my YouTube channel, The Power as Viking. You can email me at sow@projectum.com, or also on Twitter. And of course, there's also the YouTube channel for Projectum, where you can find all these 3 webinars. Once they're done, they will be they're uploaded there. And I hope to see all of you at the next webinar again, of course. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a nice day. Bye for now.